This is my first attempt at the process of improv storytelling. None of this was previously rehearsed, and what you're about to hear is literally being created on the fly. The story title is Beyond the Fulcrum's Edge. It's a short sci-fi story. The year is 2517. Mark and John are two students returning home from the semester of studying university and planetary system X573. Their home is in the planetary system Zeta 35, which is 5 light years away. Now, the ship they have boarded is run by their instructor, who also happens to live where they live, and often he takes students with him back home. The ship is a small X-72 class shuttle. Their instructor's name is Jake. He is essentially more than instructor to them, a friend, a close friend, and just a person that also isn't that much older than they are. He has been able to teach them all sorts of information on astronomy that has piqued their interest in such things as black holes and white holes, and in general places where there are distortion in time and space. A lot of this has by this time been explored by scientists, but nobody has actually been able to experience things for themselves near these objects. And within a 5 light year distance, many scientists have confirmed that there is a small black hole that would possibly be of interest to scientists, as especially amateur scientists, for various types of explorations. But the authorities have strongly advised anyone flying shuttle missions to essentially stay away from this area. Now, the ship itself is ready to fly, and the occupants have decided that they would do something a bit differently this time. Jake has confirmed the constant amount of information pertaining to this object, and has decided that it would be worthwhile that all three of them try flying as close as possible to this area where this black hole is located. As usual, the preparations for the voyage took place within several days, and the ship is equipped with a form of hyperdrive that allows, the sort of flying through space, which is the ultimate, and that is 2/3 of the speed of light. But what makes this journey different is the fact that as they are driving through space, or flying, however we may want to think of it, they're haunted by all that's unknown there. And Mark turns to John and says, "Are you sure we want to do this? Jake thinks this is more of a project for his research, and I think that this makes this trip home a little bit too bizarre, don't you think?" To which point John says, "Well, you know how Jake is, and you know, what other time will we get a chance to fly near a black hole?" So as their journey unfolds, they enter the sort of space that they've never flown through before. And all of Jake's instruments point to one location where there are oddities and data readings. And he himself admits to both Mark and John, "Listen, guys, this may be a bit more dangerous than I previously thought. We might want to just skip on this whole thing. I'm not exactly sure what I'm doing. I would like to just get close to this weird area of space and just do some recordings. It'll be useful for my research on black holes, and I think we might find something unusual, but I understand your reluctance to go with this. After all, we're just heading home for the holidays, and I don't want to do anything stupid." Mark says, "Well, I appreciate it all, and I think that as intrigued as I am, I'd rather arrive home in one piece, if you know what I mean." John said, "Come on, I want to be able to tell my grandkids about this whole thing one day. I mean, wouldn't it be exciting to just feel something in this part of space? I think we'll be all right." Jake said, "Well, listen, guys, I think it's worth spending the next hour flying really close to this area of space. I don't know much about this whole area, and I couldn't find any information other than the fact that there's a possible black hole here. My readings are off the charts. Especially the gravity waves are getting to be really strange. This could be something huge." Anyway, the ship turned toward this area of uncharted space, and before they knew, they reduced the speed to 10% of the speed of light. They've noticed something strange in the ship as they were slowing down, and that is they could feel a certain way in which their bodies were being just moved to one side of the ship slowly, as all the other objects in the ship that were loose, even though the ship had its own gravity field that would simulate Earth's gravity field, were starting to behave really strange. They would see things move into one direction, they quickly disappear, then appear in another part of the ship. And the ship wasn't that big to begin with, so they could observe these anomalies throughout the ship. There was nothing out there that they could discern, just this blackness of space. Jake was starting to wonder about their location in terms of where they were in relation to their home planet, but they were starting to get a sense that they were just not able to really locate themselves quite easily. The computers were pumping out all sorts of data, and the panic set in. Jake said, "Listen, guys, I know all of this was so weird. I don't know what to do, but turn on the hyperdrive and point away from this whole area. If I can still figure out where we are, might be just our only hope. I don't know where the event horizon is, or if there's a black hole here, but I highly suggest that we turn back. This is insane. I think there's some weird things happening here." The other two said, "Listen, John said something like, yeah, it's strange, but I say we push a little bit further down this path, just a little bit." "Okay," said Jake, "just another 10 minutes flying into this odd portion of our galaxy." And as they flew, they started to feel really strange flashes. There was something that they just couldn't describe, but was starting to really mess with their ability to stay focused. There were these visual patterns that are starting to emerge all around them. Jake finally pulled the plug on the whole idea and said, "Listen, this is it. I don't feel comfortable. I'm in fact terrified. I'm just going to hit the hyperdrive button and it'll take us somewhere. I don't care where, but I'm just going to point the ship in that direction." He plugged in some arbitrary coordinates, and before they knew it, the ship flew out of that area into a full, fast motion that, of course, led to the sort of accelerations you see in Star Wars. All of a sudden, they appeared one light a year away from their home planet. They felt thrilled knowing that A, all that weirdness was behind them, B, their home was right there, right in front of them. And they decided that it was best to not mention this to anyone. There was really no useful data that they accumulated other than some weird readings that the computers recorded that made no sense at all. So they decided to put their ship on autopilot and start their descent of their home planet. As they neared the planet, Jake glanced at all the instruments and said to Mark and John, "Well, we made it, guys. It was weird. I don't know why I did that. Sorry about my selfishness. This is just not the kind of thing I ever do. It was a thrill ride, but it could have gone so many different ways." "It's okay," Mark said. "We needed a good little scare. Let's just not mention this to anybody and just get back home. Looks like we're going to be on time." The ship descended through the atmosphere of their home planet, but there was something a bit unusual about what they were starting to see. Ahead of them were indications that, yes, they were approaching their home city, but Amazonia was not what they remembered it by. As the ship descended toward what they thought was a shuttle landing station, they looked and saw structures they couldn't recognize. They were amazed. They could see that some parts of the city were recognizable, but there were structures, certain buildings that they've never seen, certain objects that just they didn't know what they were. But they did make sense out of one area, which they were pretty sure was this landing shuttle bay. So they landed the ship there. What was really odd is there was no radio chatter. There was no way to communicate with the base, really. But they saw traffic. There were other ships. Some they couldn't recognize, others they did. So the ship landed on one area that seemed vacant. And as the roar of engines subsided and the ship touched down, they were able to see a vehicle approaching them. They announced their arrival, but there was no response on the other side. They opened the door and got out of the shuttle. The air around them was strange smelling. It's like they felt that it was certainly a bit dirtier, and everything around them looked just not as nice as they remembered it. The car that quickly arrived at their bay opened, and two men exited the vehicle and approached him. They were uniformed, and they asked them who they were. Jake said, "We are residents of this planet, and we're actually coming home for the holidays." One of the uniformed men said, "What holidays?" "Well, what do you mean, what holidays?" said Jake. "Isn't this December?" The two men looked at each other, and one of them said, "Well, it's not December, it's July, for starters, and the three of you look like some characters from an old movie." Jake, Mark, and John looked at each other and wondered, what are these two talking about? "What do you think we are?" said Jake. "What's going on? Why is this landing bay so different from the last time I was here just a couple of months ago? There are all these structures around." "Well," said one of the uniformed men, "we have rebuilt this place after the war pretty much wiped it out." Jake said, "What war? The last war we had was 200 years ago." Two men looked at each other weirdly and said, "Are you sure you're in the right place?" Jake said, "I'm pretty sure I am." Mark and John said, We're coming home from our university. What's the big deal here? Isn't this something that the 26th century is all about? Pursuit of science, knowledge, global peace." And whoa, 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 one of the uniform guys says, 26th century? This is the 28th century, buddy. I don't know, you got your numbers mixed up. Okay? You guys are starting to freak me out. "What do you mean it's the 28th century?" said Jake. "How can that be? We're just gone for a little while. I mean, this is only 5 light years that our ship had to cover, and Trust me, we don't make these trips that often, but when we do, we try to go a little bit faster than the speed of light. Well, obviously something has happened, said one of the uniformed men. You didn't by any chance go by that black hole, did you? Well, we did. We didn't think that anything would happen. Well, think about it. You might want to revisit those chapters in Einstein's work on relativity and special relativity. That's it. I hope you enjoyed the story. I made it literally as I was talking. I understand that you may have comments. I'm sure that I've made some errors. One of the questions I've kind of thought of as I was finishing up the story was, can one fly through space a speed greater than the speed of light? There are a lot of unknowns. Obviously, 5 light years away would mean that the journey took 5 years, which kind of messes with the plot. But I want to hear what you think about the story. It's an experiment, and I hope to come up with a new one pretty soon. But I'd love to see one of you try to do this on your own and try to create something like this. I'm sure a lot of this can be improved upon, but that's the beauty of the whole thing. So hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you on the other side.